Welcome to Real Divorce Talk San Diego. My name is Lynn Waldman. I'm a therapist and divorce coach, and you can find my website at divorcecounseling.com, divorcecounselingcenter.com. And I would like to introduce my guest and co-host. Shawn Skillin is a family law attorney, and you can find Shawn's website at shawnskillinlaw.com. And Mark Hill, a certified divorce financial analyst. His website is pacdivorce.com, P-A-C, divorce.com. And we are also collaborative family law specialists and members of the Collaborative Practice Law Group of San Diego. And we have a divorce options workshop where you can get most of your questions about divorce answered. It is the second Saturday of every month. The first Saturday of every month. It happens to be March 2nd.
One more time, hit us with that back.
Exactly.
You can edit that out, right?
The first Saturday of the month. But this Saturday, it's on March 2nd, which is the first Saturday.
Which is this Saturday.
Coming Saturday, just to be clear. And it is in Carmel Valley, right next to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. If you'd like information about that, please visit the collaborativefamilylawsandiego.com website. And our show today was supposed to be our Valentine's Day show. As it's come and gone, we are still going to actually talk about what happened on Valentine's Day, the state of your union. So Shawn and Mark, would you guys please tell us first a little bit about your practices and what you do?
So I'm a family law attorney. My practice is all mediation and collaborative divorce. So I try and get you divorced, stay out of court, and give you a personalized experience where it ends up that your divorce suits your particular family and your particular circumstances. And I have offices located throughout the county. If you need to get a hold of me, please call 619-299-4880 or go to my website, shawnskillinlaw.com.
And I'm Mark Hill. I'm a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst. My company, Pacific Divorce Management, specializes in the financial aspects of divorce, do only cases that do not go to court. I've done that in the past. I don't do that anymore. Just opening new offices this Friday on Carroll Canyon Road, right off of the 805, and my website is pacdivorce.com.
So today we are going to talk about were you disappointed on Valentine's Day? And so we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about dating and what that might be like in this new day and age if you're newly divorced or thinking about getting divorced. We're also going to look at the financial aspects of it, extracurricular affairs, what might happen with finances or getting your finances together if you are considering divorce. And looking at adjusting for your future. So let's say our clients or prospective clients or some of our viewers may have had a really bad Valentine's Day. What would you tell them from your perspective?
Well, first thing I would tell them is don't take one day to make a decision about the rest of your marital life.
Mm-hmm.
But it often does come down to Valentine's Day in my years of experience of working in this business that it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. So you get to the point where the marriage is not going perfectly, but then what comes along in November? The holidays, and nobody wants to make waves during the holidays. Everybody, well, we'll just get through the holidays and then we'll see. And then it's the new year and then there's stuff to do, and then Valentine's Day comes along in the middle of February. And I have noticed a little spike in new phone calls after Valentine's Day. You get some right after the first of the year where people go, okay, the holidays are through, now we're going to move forward. I've been waiting to get this behind me. But also straight after Valentine's Day. And no pressure, guys, but it is something that the ladies pay attention to much more than we do.
And you're right. I've noticed that too, that sometimes it's been a buildup of, this past holiday, other previous holidays, And it's just sometimes the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's like Valentine's Day was a bust. We didn't go out. We stayed at home. One or the other partner isn't feeling heard. It's kind of that cumulative effect.
Right.
So what about from the legal perspective, Shawn?
Oh, from a legal perspective, I guess I would say that the thing that I see in my practice is that somebody finally gets dissatisfied enough with the relationship that they file for divorce. And maybe they do it through mediation, maybe they go find a lawyer, they file and have the other person served. But what always strikes me as interesting is that clients are surprised that filing for the divorce doesn't change the partner. It's like they think that finally they're going to hear me and they're going to understand and they're going to realize that they were doing these things wrong and things are going to be different. Not that the marriage is going to be saved, but they're going to somehow act differently. And I always have to give them the bad news that filing a divorce paper doesn't impart a personality transplant. So if they didn't do any of the paperwork during the marriage, they're not going to do any of the paperwork during the divorce. So you're going to do the paperwork still. Now, maybe the last time you have to do the paperwork, but it doesn't really change things. If you didn't communicate well during the marriage, you probably aren't going to communicate well during the divorce. Might it get better down the line when you're apart for a while and you figured out this new relationship? It might not. But it doesn't really change anything. It does mean that you don't have to live with the other person 24 hours a day, but it doesn't change their personality.
Well, and you know what I've noticed is that if one partner can get the attention of the other, it's short-lived. Like if they do see changes in behavior, it's typically not long-lasting.
But Lynn, you do work with couples who are going through this challenge of, do we stay together? Is it this relationship worth saving? Talk a little bit about how that works.
So I do what's called discernment counseling or discernment therapy, and I really love it because it's up to 5 sessions, and it's solely for the purpose of the couple to take a look at the state of their relationship. It's not to improve things, to make things better. It is just to get a sense of,
It's an inventory.
yes,
Right.
what's been going on in the relationship. And the sessions are typically about an hour and 20 minutes. And there's 3 paths that the couple could take. So during these 5 sessions, they're assessing which path they want to take. Either stay as it is and don't change anything. Some people do that for the sake of their kids or health insurance or religious reasons. The second path is separation and divorce. If they see that things just aren't going to change, and typically one partner is leaning in to the relationship, the other is leaning out. And sometimes you can have both of them kind of leaning out. So like I said, path 2 would be separation and divorce. And then path 3 is a commitment to 6 months of marriage therapy. And I typically refer out to a marriage therapist because if somebody has decided that they want that 6-month commitment, I want them to have the best possible marriage therapist to really help them improve. And that's where they would be doing the work on improving the relationship. So through those 5 sessions, each partner is looking at, which path makes sense for me. What do I want to do? And for long-term marriages, when people have been married, 18 years, sometimes 6 months of therapy just to try makes sense. Mm-hmm. And other times they're done.
And also, you need to get a handle on what it's going to mean, not just for you emotionally, but what will it mean for you financially? Mm-hmm. I mean, there are so many things that cost more when you're on your own than they do when you're with someone else. It's a real surprise to most people. It's not just there's two households to pay for. There's all sorts of other things where there's a benefit in being a couple which you don't get. So to take a look at the finances and understand exactly what it might mean for you if you were to get divorced is also something I encourage couples to do if they're considering this, or even individuals.
And you know what I've noticed a lot of people have a very valid concern about is health care. Mm-hmm. Because if one spouse has been on the other spouse's health care and now they're going to be divorced, maybe they could have COBRA or something, I suppose, for.
But that's very expensive.
Yes.
And that's the point, is that, yes, that's another thing that you don't think of when you're getting divorced. Oh, my health care might cost me $400 more a month, or $700.
Or $700.
Yeah,
So
depending upon your age,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So
I mean, so there's, besides going to you and trying to figure out emotionally, you know, where you are in the relationship, and both parties want to go forward and try and fix it or leave it alone or get divorced, it is worth it to talk to someone like Mark about the finances, and maybe to somebody like me about the legal issues. There are, you know, some things about what about separate property, and what about community property, and how does the healthcare thing work? Because there are some things that we can do legally in divorce to try and mitigate some of these things. And one thing is that it is possible with some employers to stay on your ex's health insurance without COBRA. So if they allow that, then you know you need to check through your spouse's HR person, human resources person, and find out if that's possible. But I did 2 divorces in the last year, where the ex-spouse was able to stay on the other working spouse's health insurance, just like during the marriage. It didn't cost them more, and they were able to get divorced as opposed to do a suspended divorce to stay on the health insurance. But there are different options. But I've had many people come in over the years, and usually women, saying, I'm thinking about getting divorced. But this last year I consulted with a couple men too, actually, that depending on their situation, they decided it was better for them to just stay married and kind of leave them as is. One guy was separated from his wife. They'd been separated for quite a long time. There was a large family business involved with a succession plan. And after talking for a while, everybody just kind of decided it'd be better to stay married. So it really does depend on the situation, and it's worth it if you're really seriously considering that, and maybe the discernment therapy is not an issue, or you've tried it. Just know where your legal options are and what it would be like for you financially to move on your own.
And I really agree that it's so important to get the information to be able to make a good decision. It's really important for that empowerment, the knowledge that comes with it, like what are my finances going to be? Am I going to be able to support myself? Because I have seen one member of the couple or the other not want to leave the marriage because they're scared. If mom hasn't worked in 20 years, she's been a stay-at-home mom and doesn't have really skills that she feels she's going to be able to use out in the market, you know, you wouldn't want somebody to really stay in an unhappy marriage out of fear.
But it's all about knowledge, isn't it? It's all about understanding. And I've learned over the years that, you know, an individual's perception of their reality is not necessarily the reality. I've had, you know, ladies come in from extremely wealthy places and literally tell me that they're afraid of being a bag lady. And you look at the way they live and their lifestyle, and it's surprising that one would ever feel that way. So get an education. Get yourself a full understanding of your finances as you are married, and then we can work with that to see how it might look if you were to get divorced.
And it looks like we have a comment. Claire, could you read that out for us?
So Lucci wants to know, for all the just married couples out there, is it necessary to have a marriage therapy session?
Well,
There's a thought.
That is a good question. I think it's helpful because what we want to think about is, you know, based on the work of John and Julie Gottman, they're able to predict whether or not couples can stay together just from observing their interactions. And so I think it's helpful to understand what it means to turn toward one another as opposed to away or against one another. And that can happen like in everyday conversation. It's just an acknowledgement. And so intimacy really comes from how we're connecting on a day-to-day basis, and people seem to lose sight of that. They think it might be about sex, but it's really so much more than that. It's about having that emotional resonance and validation of I get you emotionally, and so I think it's helpful. I would suggest it or recommend it. It certainly, hopefully, couldn't hurt.
Well, the other thing I'd say is this too, and I've thought about this for years, is that you get married and nobody signs a contract that says, you know what, you're going to do the cooking and you're going to raise the children and I'm going to take care of the garbage and I'm going to make the living. But what happens is you evolve into these different roles during the marriage, which absolutely is healthy. Why would, when you have two partners, why, when one is an expert in one field, would the other bother to become an expert? Go do something else that can benefit the partnership. But when you divorce, those skills are now isolated. And so one may know everything that the kids do. They know their soccer schedules, what they have to take to school on different days. The other partner may not have a clue about that, but may know everything about the finances. So one of the things I've thought about for years is I even came up with a name for the program. I thought about calling it Money and Matrimony, where we would sit down with newly married couples and just say, do you guys have a budget? Okay, do you understand what a budget is and why you might want to do one? And so you're going to have joint bank accounts. You're going to keep separate bank accounts. People don't talk about this stuff, so it evolves in a very haphazard way. And then when you come to divorce, you don't have the skills to be able to process the information you need to live an independent life.
And I look at that in a totally different way. I mean, I totally agree with everything Mark just said. But what I see from the couples that come in to see me is that these roles have evolved, as he said, haphazardly, and not with what I refer to as with attention and intention.
Right.
And so by the time they're in my office, both parties are unhappy. And the man generally, not always, but the man generally, or whoever the breadwinner is, often feels that they've had a lot of pressure in the marriage to be the breadwinner, to bring home enough money to pay the bills, and to help the family live the lifestyle that they want to, and are unappreciated for that. And the other partner, who's been raising the kids and taking care of the home, feels like they've been left with a lot of responsibility and no help, and feel unappreciated for everything that they've done. And so here's both parties feeling unappreciated and like they've both done more than their share. And so what I always tell young couples is, first of all, there's so many things you need to talk about that you probably never talked about when you're dating, like budgeting and raising kids and the rules and how are we going to discipline and all these kind of things. So you need somewhere to talk about all that stuff. And then as the relationship evolves and moves on in time, and you have children and you change careers, I think you should have a therapist on retainer, honestly. Because I think every time you go through one of these significant life changes, you need to check in with somebody about, what are the pitfalls? What should we be thinking about? What, why has this changed? Often having the first child is a huge change for a relationship, and the husband feels neglected and kind of out of place. It's mom that's been pregnant, mom that's been getting all this attention for 9 months, mom that gets to tell all her childbirth stories, and then mom that's nursing the baby. And I can remember even my husband saying, when will I get to give him nutrition? He won't love me as much. And I'm like, yeah, well, this is just kind of the way it works. So all of these things happen, and then the roles just keep evolving. And next thing you know, each party is equally as unhappy for their own reasons. So it's fine, but you need to listen to each other and be willing to change things up when it's not working. If one of you wants to go to graduate school, and you have a conversation about, hey, that means the other person's going to have to pick up some slack for 6 months or a year or 2 years, and you agree, that's fine. But at the end of graduate school, have another discussion and redistribute, the responsibilities of, kids, bill paying, taxes, work, whatever, so that, you're constantly checking in and making sure that one person's not feeling overburdened.
But you're right. I mean, that's such a good point to make, because so often I meet with couples and they feel the same way. They feel like they haven't been heard, they haven't been understood. It's amazing, like for different reasons, but they feel the same way, and they don't even realize that they feel the same way. And I want to remind our viewers, please write in if you have questions. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have to the best of our ability. And
something, I've always thought that no human child would make it to 6 months old without women. Because we are clueless until they start to respond to us. Then we're pretty good, I think. But, the first 6 months is we are useless.
Yes.
Changing tack here a little bit, Lynn. I've had divorced clients, ladies that had fairly long-term marriages, women in this case, on more than one occasion come to me and say, They just don't know the new rules of dating. Everything's on the internet. Are they expected to pay for dinner when they go out? It's overwhelming, and it actually makes a difficult situation even more challenging. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Well, I would say yes, that is really difficult. And for people who've been married for so long, and dating is so different now than it was 20 years ago, obviously, with online dating and internet dating, you know, it's just so completely.
It's a whole new world.
It is a whole new world. And if you're finding it difficult, it's probably because it is. And
Right.
yeah, so, you know, I think people have to find what works for them and what they're comfortable with. I mean, I think what makes sense is having a hobby, doing something that you enjoy, and meeting people that way. And even if your hobby isn't leading you to find somebody you want to date, maybe you'd make a friend in that hobby who could introduce you to someone. So I think doing the things that you love, whatever that may be, or even outside of your comfort zone, joining a meetup group for hiking, or you know, finding a new hobby like biking or whatever it may be.
Yeah, if you've always wanted to do something, take a class is what I tell folks,
Yes.
because you're going to have a little extra time on your hands here. So
Take a class, join a church or a synagogue or a temple near you. I mean, I think I was having this conversation with somebody else, I can't remember, the last couple of days, that it's more difficult to build community nowadays. Everybody's online, everybody's on their phone, a lot of people telecommute. Oh, I was at the gym this morning. So, and people don't go to church, temple, synagogue as much anymore, which is where people found their community. They often live away from their extended family. They're a different city, the other end of the state, maybe the other side of the country. So you do have to find a place where you have community. And if it's not at work, maybe it's a gym. I mean, I belong to a CrossFit gym box, and they have a sense of community and family because it's small. And so people are building community in all different ways. And Meetup is a great thing. I have a friend who just started a Meetup group for women over 50 that want to find friends. It's basically female friends over 50. And they go to lunch or they go to dinner, and they all kind of live in the same general area of town. And so there's all kinds of different things. I would say there's some rules about online dating. Online dating is a wild, wacky world, and I know several friends who've met their partners online dating. But, you know, be careful out there. Not everybody is who they seem. Some people use different names and other things. Meet for coffee at a Starbucks or a coffee bean, tea leaf. Just start out with coffee in a public place. You drive there, meet them there. Let somebody know that you are there. You know, safety, you still need to be thinking about
Cautious.
general safety
Yes.
rules before you go on, and then just take it slow.
And you know, I think it's really important to assess, you know, thinking about, do I like this person? Do I like how they treat me? You know, not just the other way around, but you're really assessing. And I like to think of it as like even wearing a miner's cap, that you have this light shining on this person. You know, do they have a kind of personality I like? If you meet their family, do I like their family? You know, so that you're assessing along the way, is this somebody who I feel like I'd want to spend more time with? Not just do they like me, but do I like them?
And you need to process your last marriage before you get through
Yeah.
into another dating relationship. So I'd say if you didn't go to discernment therapy, you might want to go to counseling after you're divorced, and make sure that you're really ready to meet someone. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody get married right after they got divorced, and then they're back with me again getting divorced the next time. So, you know, take it slow. I know there's a big, you know, kind of fear out there that you're never going to fall in love again. No one else is going to love you, whether you're young or you're middle-aged, you're older, how long, if you've been married for 5 years, 10 years, or 30. There's always that concern that you're going to live your life alone. But you really do need some time to figure out kind of what went wrong the first time or the second time, and what your part in it was, you know, how you selected the wrong partner, and what you need to change about yourself to make yourself feel better and be ready, and then what you're really looking for in your next partner. So don't rush in.
It's kind of like that saying, everywhere you go, there you are. So if you don't take the time to, like you said, Shawn, look at what happened and kind of make sense of it and develop a narrative that makes sense, I feel like in some ways we're going to be repeating the same patterns over again.
Yeah,
So
I mean, half of all marriages first marriages into divorce, and it's higher for second marriages, and it goes up for third and fourth and fifth. And so it really does behoove you to take some time and figure out what went wrong and how you can be different and who you need to be looking for and how they need to be different from your last partner. It's easy to rush in, the hormones are flowing, and to feel like, oh, there's somebody out there who likes me. But you get to be picky too.
Yep.
And be conscious. All the way through the process, be conscious. And if you've had a long-term relationship before, that probably means you're a little older, and so the people you're dating are probably a little older, and one would expect them to be a little more cautious too. So if you get something that's someone's not reacting in a way that seems appropriate, if they're head over heels with you, and be careful with those kind of things, because it can be so seductive when somebody is adoring towards you.
Bill Eddy, who's written a bunch of books on high conflict people in relationships and stuff, he and I were just talking the other day. He's also written a book called Dating Radar, and in there he talks about you need to give a relationship a year, a good year, if not a year and a half.
Yep.
Because if someone is a high conflict person, if they have a personality disorder, like they're a narcissist, a borderline, it takes a year and a half or so for that to come out. So don't be in a big hurry. Don't be in a big rush. Claire, there's a question up there, and I can't read it. Can you read it to us?
I'm just thinking how I just learned that in my own experience. And I was right on track.
Okay, there you go.
Rachel says, is it true that if someone has been divorced once they are more likely to be divorced again, which you just mentioned, and how do they prevent a second or a third divorce?
So the statistics are that the second and third divorce is more likely to end in divorce than the first divorce. That doesn't mean that just because you're divorced once, you're the biggest problem and you are automatically going to be divorced again. The problem is if you don't figure out what went wrong the first time and you repeat your mistakes. So I think that's the best way, is to be careful about assessing yourself and assessing what you need in a partner, and then taking it slow.
And the other thing is that divorce is trauma because it changes our identity. It changes our sense of self, our self-image, and these are all things that we have told ourselves about who we are over many, many years. And when you go through divorce, all of that is kind of upended. So you are re-looking at, who am I? What matters to me? What defines me? What are my values? And I think all of that kind of really needs to be looked at if you are dating, as you're dating, throughout any new relationship. Again, it's really important to make sense of your history. You have to have a narrative that makes sense of, who am I and how did I get to where I am today, and how do I want to see my future?
Lots of introspection, some counseling, some book reading. I think the Gottman books are wonderful. I like Brene Brown, who talks about vulnerability and shame and all of those kind of things. So any of those things I think can be helpful, but just take it slow. There are a lot of difficult people out there that are challenging, and just don't be so desperate to not be alone that you jump from the frying pan into the fire.
And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, is worried that they're going to be alone and lonely. And sometimes it is lonely, and part of it is learning to tolerate the distress of being alone. But I really believe, I am a true believer, that if somebody wants to be in a relationship again, regardless of their age, that they will. I think that there's somebody out there for everyone.
It tends to happen.
I did a couple of prenups just this last year for men and women who are in their 60s. Madly in love, but they were definitely doing things different and doing prenups and taking care of themselves financially and their kids financially, who are all grown, and even grandkids. So love is out there no matter how old you are.
But that's an interesting point you raise, which is that the issues when you're an older person who is marrying are far more significant and far more challenging from my standpoint, from the financial standpoint. We have assets. I don't know about you guys. First time I got married, I think I had debt. That was about it, But over time we amass assets, and we have children, and our new spouse may have children. how much complexity does that create in terms of how your estate plan will work? How will you divide those assets? Will you even talk about it? And that's the big problem, is most people don't. They don't talk about it, and then one of the kids usually raises the issue, and mum or dad will go, well, of course it's all going to you, and the other person will go, wait a minute here, we never talked about that. So there are more complex discussions that should occur in older folks who are remarrying or even marrying for the first time, because they have more assets, more issues that should be addressed prior to it. It doesn't mean you need a prenup. You just need to talk about these things to see if you're on the same page, and then you may need a prenup. Am I correct in that, Shawn?
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people that they come in for a prenup that, first of all, you automatically have a prenup. It's called the Family Code of California. So it addresses what happens with property that you came into a marriage with versus property that you accumulate with your earnings during a marriage. So depending on the circumstances, you may or may not need a prenup. But again, that's always something that should be discussed. And I'll tell you, one of the things people never talk about in a marriage or a relationship, no matter how old or young they are, is money. And money, you know, you think of as an uncomfortable thing because there's so many emotional things attached to money, which we don't think of it in that way. But everybody was raised by parents who were savers or spenders or one or the other, and they were either on the edge or they had more than they needed. And if they come from two different places, then how you deal with money is very different. It becomes a very emotional issue. So having a discussion about how you're going to handle finances is always important.
And that I imagine that is difficult for people when they're in love and they're thinking about getting married for the second time. It kind of like,
or the first time,
throws a damper.
So my question is always this. So it's hard for you to talk about money. Is it going to be easier when you divorce?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it'll be much tougher. So the reality is, yes, it's a hard conversation to have sometimes, but have it and find out how hard it is. Because I know from my own personal experience in life is sometimes I put off doing things that I think are going to be awful. I don't even want to look at them. I don't even want to do it. And when I come to face it, it's really 9 out of 10 times it's better than I feared it would be.
And it resolved the issue for you and
Yes.
got you to where you went to, probably made you closer with that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I've seen marriages where both people are very well aware of the finances. I've seen marriages more commonly where one person is in charge of the finances and the other person may know little to none. And it may just be because the person who's doing the finances is very controlling and wants all that power. It may be the person who doesn't do finances and doesn't want to be bothered. But I've seen a lot of marriages where there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the state of the finances are. And by the time they get into my office, the person controlling the money feels like they've been harping on the budget the whole time, and the other person feels like, well, you never told me I couldn't order more stuff off of Amazon. And I'm thinking of one particular marriage was this woman who said, I never knew the finances were that tight. And they had a lot more debt than she ever expected and a lot fewer assets than she ever expected, and they were both in their early 60s. And so it comes as a big shock. And you should at least, I would say, have an annual meeting on money, if not a monthly meeting on money. And if one of you gets hit by a bus, the other one better know where the bank accounts are located.
And the passwords.
And the passwords
Yes.
to the accounts, yes. Okay, we got another question.
This is right on topic. So, should married couples have the same bank account? Should they share or should they have separate?
So for those of you who couldn't hear, the question is, should married couples have the same bank account and share, or should they have separate bank accounts? It sounds like this might be your question.
I think the
Mark.
answer is yes.
Yeah.
Look, talk about it, work through it, determine, are you going to have joint accounts? You know, very often if people are much older, they have their financial lives set up, they have their own bank accounts, their savings, their retirement accounts, and they've been managing them for some time, so they're comfortable with that situation. And then from a practical standpoint, should we have a joint account just in case? You know, should we establish a trust in our name? So again, talk to an estate planning attorney at some point if there are significant assets or children. Again, I think it's all part of the conversation. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's not right to have a joint account, or, I mean, it's that conversation that you should have very soon after starting a relationship And it doesn't have to be with marriage. If you move in before you get married together, you're living as man and wife, you're going to be sharing expenses, have the conversation then.
And I just say that in 23 years of doing divorces, I've seen it all different ways. I've seen marriages where they've always had separate accounts and they have a scheme for paying the bills and they really don't know how much money the other person has in their bank accounts, and they're in my office getting divorced. And I've seen people that have everything in joint accounts and it's all available for everybody to see, and they're still in my office getting divorced. And I've seen people with a combination of both. They have some separate accounts, some joint accounts, an idea of how they're going to do everything, and they're still in my office getting divorced. So again, there's no perfect way of doing it. It's what works for the two of you, and it's something that you agree on and modify from time to time with attention and intention.
And be aware that you can learn. Because I always remember the lady who came in to see me 10 or 15 years ago and was sitting there in tears in my office. And she said, I am feeling so humiliated. I am a Stanford Business School graduate who hasn't written a check in 20 years.
Wow.
You don't have to write checks anymore,
Wow.
But her point was, I've
Yes.
not been involved in the
Yeah.
finances, but I'm a very sophisticated, very well-educated, financially savvy person. And yet, I've been raising children for 15 or 20 years, and I don't know how any of that works. You know,
Well,
so she was embarrassed.
Yeah.
No need to be embarrassed. Get yourself an education. you know.
I did a divorce last year with a younger couple. That I think they were both maybe in their mid to late 30s, had 2 kids. Husband had always been the financial managing partner, and she had just gone along with the show. And you know, she said to me at one point, she just said, I'll never do that again. I'll always be aware of the finances, and I'm going to make sure that my kids understand how it works.
And that,
So just figure it out.
yeah, and that kind of speaks to what you were saying before, that sometimes couples will have roles, and in divorce, you know, there's that silver lining that now dad, who maybe was the breadwinner, is now stepping up to the plate, involved more with the kids, and mom, who wasn't involved with finances, now is educated and understands it, and we'll never let that happen again.
We
So-
talk about this as the opportunity for growth that can occur during a divorce, and nobody kind of comes into a divorce saying, I'm going to do this because I'm going to grow so much from
Right.
that. But at the same time, there is an opportunity to become more aware, more involved in your own life, and quite honestly more confident. I've seen people grow from being terrified to being confident throughout the process.
And I want to,
And those are, I think, probably my favorite divorces, whether it's the husband or the wife that comes in just devastated about this divorce and not knowing what they're going to do and feeling like they can't handle all this on their own, to watching them start tackling these issues one at a time and to grow into a very independent and confident person. And sometimes you get back to being who you are. You're not having to, you know, take care of everybody else around you or be bossed around by a person who wanted you to be somebody who you weren't. People kind of find themselves again when they go through a divorce, if they kind of pay attention and just work at it. But you do feel a little crazy and a little out of sorts for a while, and know that that's normal and it will get better.
and I want to remind our viewers, we do have a divorce options workshop this Saturday from 9 to noon in Carmel Valley. And the website is collaborativefamilylawsandiego.com if you would like more information, or you can call 858-472-4022. The first Saturday of every month, we have a family law attorney, certified divorce financial analyst, and mental health specialist who is a divorce coach. And we do talk about your options in getting divorced, where we will answer as many of your questions as possible.
And in fact, you and I are doing that
Yes.
this Saturday together with our friend and colleague Shawn Weber, correct?
Yes, yes. and
Different Sean, he Sean, not she Sean.
Yes,
Yes, he, Shawn, not
Shawn
she, Shawn.
Skillin
Yes.
will be at the workshop the following
Next
month.
Right.
Yes. So, so what else can we tell our viewers about dating, Valentine's Day?
There is life after divorce. There generally are relationships after divorce. Don't rush into anything, and make sure that you look at what happened last time around and try to avoid those pitfalls, and think about it before you meet somebody. What would I have done differently in the last relationship so I can apply it to the next one?
And I think I'd say that if you feel stuck in your marriage, that there's almost always a way out. So if you haven't worked for a while, you can start figuring out how to build a career. If you're worried about things, not having a life outside of your family, your kids are grown, start making friends. You can plan some of this in advance so that you don't get divorced and are left without resources and a support circle. My aunt told me once it took her 10 years to get up the nerve and to set up the situation to divorce my uncle. I mean, she built herself a career after being a stay-at-home mom for 20 years, and she got herself to the point where she was independent and ready emotionally and financially to leave, and she's never looked back since. So it's possible to set it up. You don't have to decide today or tomorrow. You can put a plan in place that might take you a while to get to. So there's always options.
Yes, and I would say clarity takes time. When people are just thinking about divorce, they do feel like they're in this fog of divorce. It takes time to know what is the right thing to do and the next step to take, and find some tolerance for yourself that you don't have to make decisions immediately and right away. Take the time you need. It is a process, probably 18 months to 2 years to really get through it emotionally. And we're here to help you. If you need resources, we can make referrals and offer support.
When's our next show?
Our next show is March 26th, right here at 1 o'clock. And we will look forward to seeing everyone. Again, March 26th, 1 o'clock, our next Facebook show.
I think we're going to talk about what do you do with all the stuff, right? What's it like to move and
That's
divide
right,
things
that's
up?
right.
And
That's what we're talking
Spring
about.
cleaning.
Spring
The
cleaning, I
perfect
think
time
that's our
for that.
title, yes,
Yes.
spring cleaning. So we're going to talk about something very practical.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See you next month.